3 in caregiving, which is the occupational health and safety in caregiving. Okay, health and safety of workers, patients, co-workers, and employers is a primary concern in caregiving. As in any other occupations, there are moral, social, and economic implications when a worker or the patient meets an accident while in the nursing home. Okay, at the end of the lesson, you should be able to identify hazards and risks, determine hazard and risk indicators in the workplace, and determine the effects of hazards. Okay, first, before we dive into the proper lesson, we need to know first these kind of words or terms. So, first is well-being. Well-being means the state of being healthy. Okay, this is the major goal that we have. That's why we are talking about this occupation and health and safety, for everyone to be healthy. Okay, next is hazard. Hazard means it is a source of danger. There are, I think, 5 types of hazard. We'll talk about that later. Next is adverse. It is harmful or bad. Next is ergonomic. Ergonomic is designing and arranging things and people to improve safety and efficiency. Next is cursory inspection. Cursory inspection simply means rapid inspection. Pas-pas nga pag inspection. Next is awkward body movement, is body movement that is not in rhythm or lacking in ease or grace. Okay. Next is engineering control. They are the ones who will regulate the operation of machines for safety. Next is the administrative control. They're the ones who will regulate or enforce the rules or policies in the performance of duties of employees. Next, what do you need to know? Objectives of occupational health and safety. Occupational health and safety, or OHS, is primarily concerned with the overall well-being of workers by implementing health and safety standards in the workplace. This aims to promote physical, mental, and social well-being of every worker. What does well-being gani means? It is the health, the good health of every worker. Next is to create a workplace that is conducive to welfare. Now, what kind of department is responsible to create a workplace that is conducive to a welfare? That department is the administrative control. Okay, they're the ones who will regulate and promote. Next is remove or reduce hazards and risks that are detrimental to workers' health and safety. And lastly, promote the highest level of productivity possible when workers are safe and healthy. Okay, sample hazard in nursing homes and hospitals. Okay, physical hazards. Okay, physical hazards are the hazards brought about by unsafe working conditions. Some examples are poor ventilation, air and noise pollution, poor lighting, improper electrical wirings and frayed cords, slippery floors, broken windows, and creaking doors. Okay. First, let me further explain what hazard is. Hazard is a accident waiting to happen. Like for example, a banana on the floor. That is considered a hazard. Okay? It is an accident waiting to happen. Another example of a physical hazard is a poor ventilation. When we say ventilation, it talks about the light or the air regulating in a certain room. When we have poor light, our vision becomes blurry, and in that a lot of hazard is possible to happen, like getting tripped by a certain object because the light is too low that you can see it. Noise pollution, you can't hear correctly what the instruction is saying because of the noise outside. Poor lighting, improper electrical wires and frayed cords, slippery floors, just like in this illustration. He got slipped because the floor is wet. Broken windows and creaking doors. Creaking doors, mao ni si daang kanang nag-abli bitaw sa imong pultahan mo di mo tingog. Ki kana. Okay. Biological hazards. There are hazards coming from workers or patients with infections or diseases and from contaminated human waste containing bacteria, viruses, fungi, and parasites. Workers in nursing homes, hospitals, daycare centers, and laboratories have higher risk of exposure to these hazards than those in other occupations. Biological hazards may produce infections, skin irritations, allergy, and respiratory disease to workers. So, what's the difference between physical hazard and a biological hazard? The physical hazard are these are just mere objects surrounding you. When we talk about biological hazards, these are live microorganisms that can cause harm to your health. Okay? Bio means life. These little microorganisms has a life too that can cause you disease. That's why it's also a hazard. Now, in case of a caregiver, for example, your patient has a COVID, COVID-19, that is considered as biological hazard. Okay, it is a virus. Okay. Next is ergonomic hazard. These are hazards brought about by the nature of work. For example, carrying and lifting heavy things, body positions, long hours of standing and working conditions, working with machines producing continuous noise which have consequences on the worker, such as poor posture, sore muscles, sprains, back injury, injury in the hands, and numbness in the parts of the body. Since a caregiver takes care of a different patients with different illness or conditions like old age or patients who are required continuous physical care, he or she is exposed to many ergonomic hazards because of the direct physical care he or she provides to the patients. Like for example, in this illustration, they what the ergonomic hazard he has here is looking at the screen for hours and his body posture is not right. Okay, having that kind of posture for hours can cause you back pain or eye sore. Okay, that is what we call ergonomic hazard. The nature of your work. For example, as a teacher, my ergonomic hazard is having a sore throat, talking almost whole day. It is nature of my work. Okay, talking and talking and talking and it may cause me a sore throat at the end of the day. That is considered as ergonomic hazard. Okay, every work that you will do, like for example a construction worker, it requires a lot of carrying and lifting heavy things. That is their ergonomic hazard. Okay, next is the chemical hazards. These are hazards caused by exposure or handling of chemicals that may be harmful to health. Proper use of these chemicals can ensure safety, although some caregivers can be sensitive that contact with chemicals can bring skin irritations, allergy, or can even cause breathing problems or some illness. One example of a chemical is a uh, s- bug sprayer, bygone is a chemical, so that when spraying it at home, you should not be inside for at least thir- uh, 10 minutes. let the let the smell or the chemical of the spray disappear, and you can safely go back inside, because it can cause a disease or any unexpected irritations or allergy. Okay, other chemicals is in a caregiving job. One case is the mercury of the thermometer. You should be careful on handling this clinical thermometer because it has a small amount of mercury at the bottom of it. When you can't properly handle it and it falls down to the ground, it may shatter and the mercury will leak, and that mercury can be a chemical hazard to you and to other patients. Okay, it can cause a lot of disease or illness because mercury can easily penetrate under your skin, and it can mix to your bloodstream. Okay, next, some of these ergonomic hazards the caregiver may be exposed to are lifting, carrying heavy loads, too much body movement like bending, reaching, walking, pushing, pulling, standing, carrying, and holding. Like this in this illustration, he is lifting up the patient. So this is a ergonomic hazard for the caregiver, and it gives also the caregiver a awkward body movement. Okay, awkward body movement means it is a not day-to-day movement that you have. It is unbalanced, it is not in rhythm. I think that's it. Awkward. Okay, helping them assume different body positions. Okay, next is continuous hours of work attending body positions. Lastly is the psychological hazard. These are hazards that have impact on the mental and emotional condition of the worker brought about by long hours of physical activities, thus causing bodily fatigue, stress, anxieties, worries, depression, and loss of concentration at work, which affect his or her quality of performance. Okay? Some of the physiological hazards a caregiver may expose to are too much demand from patients, working on a graveyard shift causing body weakness and fatigue which reduces concentration and causes sleepiness, verbal abuse from demanding patients and sometimes even from supervisors, too much demand from supervisor and other superiors. Okay? Some chemicals that a caregiver may be exposed to are cleaning chemicals for equipment, tools, and etc., disinfectants for the bedroom, bathroom, and surrounding areas, sanitizing solution for kitchen and dining wares. Okay, let's go back on how many hazards we have. One, physiological hazard. This is more like your social connection to the workplace, to the people of to the person or to the people of your workplace. Next is the psychological hazard. This talks about your mind, okay, your mental health. Psycho means mind, logical, uh, psychology. Psycho means mind. Logi comes from the Greek word logos, which means study. Psychological hazards. Okay, this talks about your mental health and emotional condition. Next is the chemicals. It talk about like one example is the bug sprayer. It forgot. Ergonomic hazards, our posture and our work, daily work. Biological hazard, the disease or the viruses, and the physical hazard. which is thus our surroundings, the objects that surround us. Okay. We are now on in evaluating the presence of hazards and their consequences. A caregiver must prove that indeed there are hazards in his or her workplace. To prove this, he or she must gather data on past and present health and safety problems in the workplace. To gather data, the following strategies can be done. First is to make observations on different areas, okay? On how the things are arranged, how they are used, and how they are taken care of, and how they are disposed. Okay, next is interview co-workers if there are any complaints on physical and physiological hazard and those related to health and safety. Next is look into past records of injuries, illnesses, and disorders that occurred in the workplace and experienced by previous employees. Do cursory inspection of the workplace as you make your daily rounds. What does cursory inspection means, gani? Uh, Cursory inspection means pas-pas nga pag inspection. Okay. Fifth, gather information about the workplace from records or feedbacks of those who have worked there. Okay, from the data gathered, when you are finished doing these things, you will have your data. Make an evaluation of the hazard and risk and their consequences by asking these questions. How extensive is the presence of hazard and risk? What are the possible effects brought by those hazards to the workers and even patients? What have been done to control or minimize these hazards? Okay. Controlling hazard and risk. First is by eliminating it. This means removing the hazard completely so it cannot anymore pose a danger, harm, or injury to the worker. Like for example, the banana on the floor, we must eliminate it. So we pick it up and put it in a trash bin. So it will no longer impose or pose danger, harm, or injury to the workers, patients, and other persons in the workplace. 2. By substituting with a less hazardous, dangerous one. Okay, like for example, you're a office worker, and in this case, it is a ergonomic hazard. You have a too low chair. Your chair is too low for your table, so that is a ergonomic hazard. So it must be replaced that is leveled to your table, a chair that fits the level of your table, so it can be less hazardous. Okay. Oh, there is an example: removing slippery floors and install non-slippery ones. Okay, that's one example of substituting. Substituting. B. Substitute the use of a strong chemicals and disinfecting wall tiles and equipment with a milder one. Next, by engineering control, this means changing machinery or equipment or a work process to reduce exposure to hazards. Okay, this is the work of a engineering control, changing the machinery or equipment. Okay, by administrative control, this means working on a limited number of hours in a hazardous area. Okay, next is by wearing personal protective equipment or PPE. This means wearing appropriate personal attire and accessories to protect the worker from exposure to hazards. Personal protective equipment in nursing homes and daycare institutions include coverall garments, masks, gloves, respirators, and eye and ear protection. Okay, in a nutshell, you must remember this. 1. Occupational health and safety aims for the overall well-being of workers by implementing health and safety standards in the workplace. 2. Sample hazards in the workplace include physical, biological, ergonomic, physiological, and chemical hazards. 3. there is a need to evaluate the presence of hazards before attempting to control them. To evaluate, gather data on past and present accidents or injuries of workers and inspect the workplace of its facilities. Fourth, hazard and risk can be controlled in 5 ways: by eliminating, ang pag-remove, by substituting, by changing the chair or changing the slippery mat on the floor, or by engineering control, by replacing such equipments to be less hazardous, by administrative control, or by giving the workers less time on a certain area to be less hazardous, and lastly, and by using personal protective equipment. One example is we can see a lot of PPE in these current events because of the COVID-19. That is the doctors wearing full PPE, okay, to reduce the biological hazard of the virus, which is the COVID-19. Fifth, observe health and safety practices in caregiving. Okay, here is our activity. Write your answers on your big notebook. You must copy and answer. This is Module 3, Activity 1. Write true if the statement is correct, or false if it is incorrect. Okay? And that's it. I hope you learned a lot today.